Welcome to MAT 2LB, booklet number 3, decimals, percent, and tax, lesson number 4, fractions, percents, and decimals. So by introducing fractions, percents, and decimals, all three together, the goal of the lesson today is to talk about how to convert from these three discrete forms smoothly. So to be able to change from a fraction to a percentage, and from a percentage to a decimal like we did in the last lesson, or from a decimal to a percent like we did in the last lesson, or how to express a percent as a fraction. We already did that in the very first lesson. So really the last step that we're going to look at is how to get from a fraction back to a percentage. So in math, the fraction bar means divide. So when you have a numerator and a denominator in a fraction, what it's asking you to do is divide the numerator by the denominator. Then you end up with a decimal. Once we have a decimal, it's very much like lesson number 3, where we can convert from a decimal to a percentage by multiplying it by 100. But let's work on the first step first. Example number 1, express 2 over 5 as a decimal. So our first step is to divide the numerator by the denominator. Now that's important. And what I want to do is highlight which piece is the numerator. That's the one on top of our fraction. And our denominator, the one on the bottom of our fraction. We'll get a different answer if we divide the denominator by the numerator. So we always want to be dividing the top by the bottom when we're working with fractions. So first step here, if we're working with 2 over 5, to becoming a decimal, we want to divide the numerator by the denominator. So we are going to write in here 2 divided by 5, and that will give us, when we type it into our calculator, as I'll do right now, that gives us 0.4. So our answer is 0.4. Let's try another one together. Express 3 over 8 as a decimal. Okay, so first things first, the numerator is the 3, that's the number on top. I think I did that in orange last time. And the denominator is the number on the bottom, and that's going to be an 8. So we are going to, in order to convert this to a decimal, we are going to divide the numerator 3 by the denominator 8. And we'll type that into our calculator, which gives us 0.375. And we're going to write down all the numbers. I know we tend to focus a lot on decimals that have 2 place values after, or hundredths, or cents if we're dealing with money. Nothing wrong with having three values after our decimal place. So we're going to keep all of them. I don't want you to round. I don't want you to just leave one off. I want you to write everything you see in the display of your calculator. Okay. B, express 5 over 20 as a decimal. I'd like you guys to hit pause here in the video. Try this one on your own. When you think you've got an answer, come on back and we'll see how you did. Okay, you're back. First things first, our numerator is 5. Our denominator is 20. In order to convert from a fraction to a decimal, we divide our numerator, 5, by our denominator, 20. And when we type that into our calculator, we get 0.25. So this is the first step in our process of converting from a fraction to a percent. So this is converting from a fraction to a decimal. We divide the numerator by the denominator. If we want to go all the way from a fraction to a percentage, we need to perform these same first steps where we divide the numerator by the denominator, and then once we have that decimal, then we multiply by 100. So let's have a look at example number 2, which outlines those same steps I just described. Express 4 over 16 as a percent. First step, divide the numerator by the denominator. So our numerator in this question is 4. Our denominator is 16, and when we divide 4 by 16, which we type into our calculator, we get 0.25. So that's the series of steps we did at the beginning of the lesson. That's that right there. Step 2 is what we did in lesson number 3. We take that decimal now, 0.25, and we multiply it by 100, and that gives us our answer, 25% when we type it into our calculator. So our answer, 25%, is 4 over 16. Let's try example A together, and then we'll let you try B on your own. So express 2 over 20 as a percent. First step is to convert it into a decimal, which we do by dividing our numerator, 2, by our denominator, 20. When we type that into our calculator, we get 0.1. Our second step is to take that decimal and multiply it by 100 to turn it into a percentage. And when we multiply 0.1 by 100, we get 10, and get the right notation here, percent. So there's two phases in getting from a fraction to a percent. So what I'd like you to do is try B on your own. Remember, there's two steps. The first is to take 3/60, turn it into a decimal, and then to turn that decimal into a percent. So give this one a try, hit pause. When you think you've got it, come on back. Okay, you've given it a try. Let's see how you did. Our numerator is 3. Our denominator is 60, and our first step is to divide 3 by 60 to get a decimal. And when I divide 3 by 60, I get 0.05. My next step is to turn this decimal into a percent, which I do by taking my decimal and multiplying it by 100. And when I multiply 0.05 by 100, I get 5, and there's my notation, percent. So this takes us to the end of lesson number 4. If you're feeling confident with this material, now's the time to head off and try the worksheet. If you need to go back and try portions of this lesson again, please feel free to do so before you go to the worksheet, and I'll see you in lesson number 5.